What's up, everybody? It's Phil and Pete, and we have a special guest tonight, Renee, and we are talking about what we have watched the last week. As usual, Monday nights is what we are watching day. And before I get into anything at all, I gotta say thank you because our viewership keeps growing. I mean, it's these small numbers, but then they keep doubling every other week, so it's cool. So if
It's
you're
been
telling
nice. It's been
it is.
nice.
It's been really nice. Last week, Pete and I actually had an audience, which was really nice. Renee was actually part of that audience, and we'll say hi to her in a second. But so thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing, liking, subscribing to the page, and we're just building the audience slowly but surely, and we're being pretty consistent. We usually were on between 10 and 11 p.m. São Paulo time, which is about an hour ahead of Eastern Standard Time because it depends on internet, what time we get home from work, and all these things. So we can't give you an exact time that we're on, but it's somewhere around that time. If you happen to be doing nothing, click on my page here, Phil in Brazil, and chances are I will be live with Peter, and we'll probably have a guest on like tonight. Uh, Renee, what's up? How are you?
Hey, I'm good. I'm good. Enjoying my cool night in Rio de Janeiro.
She's in Rio, folks. We're all expats here. Peter lives close to me here in São Paulo, and Renee's in
Yeah, I live
Rio.
3 kilometers down the road, actually.
Yeah, it's very close, very close. But we all are lovers of film when we get a chance to watch them. And I found out about, 3 or 4 months ago that Renee actually has a little bit of love for horror movies. So
Yeah.
then when I found this documentary horror noir, which we're going to talk about tonight, I invited her to watch it with me and give her impressions of it. But before we get into that, let's just see what movies we will be talking about tonight. So, like I mentioned, we got Horror Noir, which is a documentary about the history of blacks in the horror genre. And then, Pete, what's this movie you got here?
This is Host. It's a Shudder original film about a haunted Zoom call.
All right. And then after that, we're going to go into what some may consider another type of horror, which is black conservatism. Uncle Tom. But I'm going to give this movie its fair shake because it was actually pretty well made. And then we're going to close it out with what there, Peter?
That is What Keeps You Alive, which is a same-sex take on the partner who tries to kill you genre.
And it gets pretty rough from what I've read on Pete's
It
page.
does, man. I don't want to give away anything, but yeah, I'll get there.
All right. Anyway, guys, so that's what we'll be talking about tonight. But I got to give a little bit of a shout out to Lovecraft Country, which I saw last night. It's an HBO original series. We got Jordan Peele, J.J. Abrams, sorry, and Misha Green are the brains behind this, and I loved it. I did a live stream actually last night, so check the page and you'll find it. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to be doing my live streams every Sunday, like I used to back when The Walking Dead was actually good. And
Right.
like it actually got me pumped up enough to want to do one afterwards. And then Pete and
Actually, it was good this year. It was good, and then they didn't make the last freaking episode.
it was decent, but not enough to get me off my ass to do a live stream. And then Pete and I did Game of Thrones the last season, which got a lot of views, so that was a lot of fun. So I'm trying to get Pete into this show, and then maybe we'll be able to do some live streams after each episode.
Oh no, I'm sold. I'm sold.
It's a lot of fun, guys.
J.J. Abrams, I'm there.
Yes. So watch that. I'm not going to give too much away, but later, after you've seen the episode, check out the live stream for that. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the page, please. because there's a whole lot of content on this page. So we're going to begin, and I'm going to bring Renee in to the conversation because we're going to be talking horror noir. And this documentary goes into the history of blacks in the horror genre. And what sparked this me watching this movie is because I was on a blurred page, and for those that don't know what a blurred is, it's a mixture of the word black and nerd. Okay, you put them together, you get a blurred. So in this page, one of the administrators put out the question: what are some of the tropes that you get so sick of in um, he put it open to sci-fi, fantasy, and horror. And then, man, that thread just went on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And I'm actually opening it up here to read some of the stuff that people had written. But some of the more famous ones that maybe even people outside the black community might know is like the token Negro, right? Like there's always like the one best friend that's got to be black in an all white cast, or the black
Yeah.
the blacks that die first, right, in the horror movies. Um, or the blacks that will sacrifice themselves to save some white person that's doing something really stupid, and it goes on and on and on. And in this conversation, a guy posted the link to this movie. So I was like, man, I have to watch it. I had a really hard time finding it. So I want to thank our friend Craig, he's a friend of the show, who got me to be able to watch it. Let's just put it that way. He set it up so I was able to watch it. So thank you, Craig, for that. And this afternoon I watched it with Renee, and I want to get her first impressions of the movie first, especially coming from a black woman's perspective. So what did you think, Renee?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Let me preface this with saying that I used to want to become an actress. Okay, you didn't know this. I never told you this. But when I was in high school, I was in a lot of the skits. I was in the drama club. So I kind of grew up on just a lot of film, and I loved horror. And it was just like, oh my God, this is what I want to do. But then I didn't. I became a therapist because it was like, yeah, I don't know if I can make money, being an actress or be successful. And I say that to say because of the history, right? Like you talked about,
Hey, and
what can you? I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Oh, okay. So you talked about what they started talking about in horror noir, where you had either the token black or the black who would die first. So growing up watching movies of the 70s, it was that was always what happened, and I was like, well, I don't know if I'll actually make it into the film industry. If I did, I might get these little roles and not last that long. So how much would I really be able to make, to make a living? And now, just looking at the difference of movies now, I'm like, damn, had this been like 20 years ago, I would have definitely went into acting. I would have definitely pursued that because I would have felt like, oh, I could do more. So with that said, I really love this today. I really, really loved it. I loved hearing the different perspectives on um, on horror with Black people in it. And when you asked me to watch this with you and to come on, the first thing I said was, "Oh, yeah, the Black person always dies first." That's the biggest thing that stuck in my head. And it was interesting when one of the ladies, I forget her name now, one of the actresses that was kind of critiquing and talking about it, who was dispelling that the belief about Black people always dying, and she did give a really good perspective, that we talked about afterwards about.
I,
And
I, I just, I just want to ask Pete something,
go
okay? Because
ahead.
Yeah.
Pete is neither a woman nor black, nor he's a man.
Apparently not. Apparently
Yeah,
not.
yeah, he's a man. And Pete, what I thought was really interesting is when I brought up this Black Noir movie last week. you did say something real cool, which is I never noticed it, but I'm open minded. So I just want to ask you real quick before I get back to Renee, like, how, you know, what feelings do you have about horror as far as the democratic side of horror, as far as having different races, having women represented? Like, what part is there any time that you ever stopped and said, hey, that seems kind of different, or that seems kind of weird that they don't have this happening? Do you ever think about that?
Not really, no. I mean, we talked about women last week. We talked about women in horror last week and about how it is a very feminist genre, really, even though there's a lot of gratuitous tits and ass, but that's just to get the butts in the seat. The stories basically tell the story of women fighting for survival against usually a male antagonist. So, in that respect, it's very empowering. In terms of race, I guess that's just something I've never really paid much attention to. And it's funny because you've seen the meme about LL Cool J being the first black guy to survive a horror movie, but that's
Yeah.
actually not true. Like Reggie the Reckless survived Friday Part 5. Okay, he
Mhm.
was a kid, so he's kind of exempt, but then Rodney Eastman did it in Nightmare 3, so it's not unprecedented.
Yes.
In terms of like really racist portrayals in horror films, you got to go back to the '70s where like a bunch of white producers thought it was a good idea to produce movies specifically for a black audience, but made completely by white people. And that's the group that produced movies like Blackula. Like, I will tell you, you should watch Blackula. It's funny, but it's funny in like a hand in your face kind of way. Like, it's
Oh, we're
it's
gonna get into
unbearably
we're
okay.
gonna get
Good, good, good.
we're gonna get into Blackula. No, but that's cool. I just want to. I like to hear these different perspectives. So, Renee, when was the first time that you watched a movie, a horror movie, and you thought, "Oh my God, look, that represents me"?
Wow, that's a great question. And I do want to say real quick too, it was a great question that you asked Peter as well. It was nice to hear his perspective. And just real quick, I think that it's hard if you're white to notice that difference, because I think you're just kind of used to seeing. So I think that from a black perspective, it's going to be a little different. You're going to notice that we're not there, that no one looks like us. Um, so what was your question for me again, please?
What was the first movie that made you go, "Okay, this is us," or "This is me on the screen"? That made you go say that, made you feel that way. First horror movie.
It's first horror movie. Um, I have to think, because what comes to mind is like Girls Trip, and then um, horror movie that made me think. Um,
See, the fact that it's so hard for you to think about that is telling.
it's
But
telling. Yeah,
yeah,
because the thing is, I'm like going back and I'm thinking, because as much as I love horror, I've watched Freddy Krueger, I've watched Friday the 13th, Halloween, Hellraiser, The Shining, Candyman. And I'm just like, okay, I didn't really see any black women being portrayed like me, living kind of lifestyle that I live.
yeah,
Or and you go back and you see a lot of times in the older movies, the women either being like that, the maid, the old mammy, or sexualized. Um, so it's like, yeah.
no. So let me just get into a little bit of what this movie is about. And I think it was a great documentary. It's a shame it doesn't seem to have gotten as much repercussion as it should have. But you can find it on Shutter. Okay, if you happen to have the Shutter horror movie, it's like the Netflix of horror movies,
Oh, dude,
and
you
it's
just
gonna
gave
go.
away your password.
Did I?
Yeah, yeah, you totally. You said I have password for Shutter, but I won't say whose. But now we know.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, but anyway, it's on Shutter, and it goes all the way back. This documentary, all the way back to the beginning, like the very first movie, more or less. You know, what's considered one of the very first movies, which is Birth of a Nation, and its depiction of
Right.
blacks in the movie. It's like these horrific, monsters in the woods that are preying
Yeah, it
on
was a
white women.
Klan movie.
It was a Klan movie. The what do you call it? The membership to the Klan went to the millions after that movie. And then it
Yeah.
goes forward a little bit into the 20s and the 30s. And Pete probably would know this because he watched Bamboozled, where it was just like black folks were depicted as just kind of stupid and scared of their own shadows if they were in horror movies. And then it gets into some directors around that time that tried to humanize blacks. That goes into Spencer Williams, who most people may know from Amos and Andy, but he directed a horror movie at that time. But it showed black people just like talking, like we're talking, right? Like we're just having a decent conversation. And then in the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, that's when it was really bad for black representation. There was basically
Hmm.
nothing unless it was like a voodoo priest or some type of
It was it was a bad time, I think, just in general for black actors. I mean, like it was
Yeah.
hard to get parts in those times. I mean,
yeah.
Sidney Poitier totally broke the barrier, and even
Yeah.
he could only get parts where the essence of his character was being black. Like he was always like the black teacher, black cop. He was never just the cop or the teacher.
I like that you made that point because I'm
Hmm.
going to get into that in a little bit. So, so then it took until 1968. Basically, that's the watershed year because of the Night of the Living Dead, where we got Dwayne Jones playing the lead character. He's the man. He's killing a bunch of zombies. He's doing his thing. So that was shocking. That was cool. They go a lot into that movie, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And shocking. I remember the first time I saw it. Spoiler alert: he gets shot at the end and killed.
Yeah,
And
yeah. And he
it
turned out
was
to be wrong too. He turned out to be wrong. That's the thing. Like there is like this whole kind of civil rights aspect to it, where it's like,
yeah,
okay, like the redneck white asshole is telling the black guy that he's making a wrong decision, but the thing is, the fact that his decision is wrong doesn't mean that it isn't fundamentally sound. Like if you're following the movie, his idea is basically good. It just turned out not to work.
and then after this, it gets into the 70s, which was what Pete was talking about with the black exploitation. And we got AIP. They go real deep into AIP, and I didn't even know that. So like Pete's more down than I was with, because I think Renee too. We were talking about how we didn't know that a lot of these black exploitation movies were actually made by whites, and they really used the most stereotypical version of blacks imaginable, and usually not the best depiction of them, but not always. You know, we
Yeah,
had a few
Right.
good
I
cats.
think Shaft had a lot to do with that because I remember Shaft was like a huge hit.
Oh yeah, that
Like
was.
it resonated with everyone, like black
Yeah.
people, white people, like everyone could get down with Shaft, and it's like Hollywood just jumped on that bandwagon and said,
Mhm.
okay, like we need to like get black butts in the cinema and create characters they can identify with. We're gonna go with this, but
Right. He
it
was
was
like
done
cool. He was,
terribly wrong.
yeah. But I mean, because Shaft was like cool. He was good looking. He
Yeah,
had,
he's a yeah, he's a
badass. Like,
motherfucker, man. Yeah,
right.
you
Nobody
gotta
wants to
love
mess
Shaft.
with him.
They do show a little clip from Shaft before they get into the black exploitation. But I'll tell you something about Blackula though, because they actually have the director as one of the interviewees for this documentary. His name is William Crane, and that was an exception. You know, they consider that an exception to the black exploitation because it was written and directed by a black man, had a black actor, and there's kind of subtle messages in the movie to show that, hey, we're not trying to make just another black exploitation movie where all these black characters are buffoons or they're
Right.
acting a
Right.
type. So they do go into Blackula a little bit, and actually they even mention how that's Pam Grier's first acting role in Scream
Oh,
Blackula
really?
Scream sequel,
Wow.
and how it's one of the first roles or one of the few roles where they actually let her act, where she didn't have to be
Right.
the Greer. I mean, thank God for that too, though. Oh my goodness, Foxy Brown, my God. Um, but in the end, no, but it's cool that the people in the documentary, because they have like these two professors that are talking, and then they have the actors, and these professors and actually like a film historian, and they when they talk about that black exploitation period, they give it like mixed reviews because they're like on one side it was cool because we got to see representation, like a lot of it, and the other side a lot of it was really bad representation, but at least we were getting parts. And that kind of goes back to
Right.
what Pete was talking about with Sidney Portier. Because man, I get so mad if when I see like sometimes in these black Facebook groups where people shit on Sidney because oh why wasn't he making this type of movie or why well, he's always like the nice black guy, he was like the black guy they could control. I'm like that's all the motherfucker could do. Like
Right.
it took
Yeah.
Sidney
He,
before
he opened
he went.
doors. He opened
And that's the
doors.
thing that people have to think about is that the film industry at that time is different than it is now, and so he actually gave way for the actors that we have today. So if he went
Exactly,
in and said, "No, I don't want to do this scene," or if any of them said, "No, I don't want to be portrayed this way," they just wouldn't get the part. They would continue to
exactly,
have the white people dressed in blackface, right? Like they did originally. There was white people dressed in blackface playing a black actor. So,
exactly.
even though it might not have been the best role, that's what they had to do to get in, and start opening the doors.
Exactly. So, like, when people hate on Sidney Poitier, I'm like, man, read some history or something, because dude was, yeah, he was opening the door, and it's not easy to be the ones opening the door.
No.
He's a legend. But then, Pete, when we get into this is the stuff that I thought was interesting, even for your perspective, to notice the tropes, So, like me, growing up, I grew up in a pretty mixed neighborhood. So, in a way, it took me leaving that neighborhood when I was about 18 or 19 when I moved to Philadelphia to really start waking up to, okay, this is what it's like to be around more black people than growing up. So a lot of this stuff I felt, but I didn't know how to verbalize, um, which is characters, like black characters. When I would see a black character in a movie, okay, it's the best friend. I mean, I would love them, like Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost. I mean, she deserved that Oscar, but she plays the role. It's this trope that they talk about in the movie about one of the tropes is the black people are like the magical Negroes. They're the ones
Right.
that like an all white cast, and then all of a sudden, this mysterious black person that has magical powers. Either they
Ah,
do
Morgan
voodoo.
Freeman. Morgan Freeman is good at
Yeah,
that.
Mhm.
what movie are you talking about?
Even
The
and
boat?
and even
No,
beyond
all
that, like
movies.
a lot of times we're also portrayed as like the superpowers or doing something evil, like the voodoo, and
Yes,
even I remember watching Bad Boys, and I love Bad Boys. It's not a horror, but you had the part with the Jamaicans doing the voodoo. And it's like, so we would be portrayed in
oh
that
yeah.
negative light, And for me, it's kind of like, okay, why is it that we're showing the negative to this? And there's so much beautiful really to voodoo, but we see the Hollywood version of voodoo. So everybody becomes afraid of it. They don't
And,
see the healing and the good that it does. I mean, you know?
and to put some context into that, just so everybody knows, is Renee actually has Haitian background. So um, it's totally demonized. And I will be
Yeah.
100% honest because I'm a person that does not mind admitting when he was a stupid idiot and then he kind of learned something new. But it took me really until I came to Brazil and I started dating people down here that were into macumba, candomblé, umbanda to realize, oh my God,
Mhm.
okay, I had such a negative view And my mom was an evangelical, so she also had a very negative view of dealing with and even that they call it black magic, voodoo,
Right.
Santeria, and that's what you get from
And it
movies.
comes from the film. Yeah, it comes from the
Of
movies.
course,
And
it comes from
so many
movies.
people have those same views of that, but it's
Yeah,
not realistic. It's not real. I mean, that's, you don't really truly see those things. I mean, I've been to condom ceremonies, I've been to voodoo ceremonies, and I've never seen what I've seen on the screen, you
yeah. No,
know?
I've been to a condom blast thing here, and it was very peaceful. It was very nice,
Hmm.
nice to too. So then, we get into the 1970s, and we move up into the 1980s because black people started to protest against it. So they were like, okay, we opened the door a little bit. We got a lot of representation. So is the 1980s going to be better? Not exactly. You know,
Right.
and that's where we get a lot more of these tropes, like the black guy being killed first, or getting close to the end but dying, and then the lady.
Rarely first. It's
No,
actually hard
that's
for
the
me
thing.
to
I
think of
agree
a
with you.
movie where the black guy gets killed first,
Yes,
but you
no,
know they're gonna die.
they're gonna die early. They're gonna die early. Uh, Pete actually. I remember a few. I can't remember by name, but there's a few that where they would die first. I'd be like, ugh. But there are exceptions to the rule. So this professor, she actually breaks this down, which is really interesting, where she's like, well, sometimes the black guy can't die first because,
Hmm.
again, when we're looking at film history, and this is going way back to like King Kong and like A Birth of a Nation, black people were portrayed as these scary kind of beasts. So if you got to keep the black guy long enough to show that if the big monster kills the black guy, then he's really the big badass monster. Like he got the black guy.
Hmm.
Because the white
Right.
folks are doing all the dumb stuff in the movie. And but there are exceptions. And there are great directors, man. I always give Wes Craven props because he's a very inclusive director. Um,
Yeah,
Rid-
yeah,
Ridley
definitely.
Scott, in Alien. Pete and I, by the way, a little bit of an ad here. Pete and I are watching the Alien movies so that we are going to do a ranking podcast on them. And Yusef, the character from Alien, he's one of the last to die, and he's a great character. He's a great, great character.
Yaphet Kotto.
Yeah. And the actor from The Thing, he survives. I see. I didn't know that because I fell asleep at the beginning. I don't like The Thing, guys. You can take away my brownie points. I'm just not a
Yeah, I
fan of
know
that.
we're gonna get fucking flamed for that, but I don't like the thing either.
But apparently, he survives to the end. So okay. So black characters
It's a
do
good
survive.
special effects show, but story wise, it's
Oh, I got bored after the dog died. I thought that was the most interesting character in the movie, and then I just fell asleep. But it happened enough where it's part of like this. It's almost like the red shirts, in Star Trek. You know the red shirts are gonna get it. If you actually watch every
right.
episode, you realize it's not as much as people say. Not every episode. It's just like with Captain Kirk. There's everybody thinks, oh, Captain Kirk was fucking every alien in every episode of Star Trek, the original series. He
He was though. He
no, he
was
is
though.
break down. Actually, somebody did like a little chart. It's like he doesn't really get with that many alien women, but he does it enough
He gets with a
where
lot though. He gets with more alien women than I do.
yes. But anyway, so these are some of the tropes. Renee, what is the sacrificial Negro?
The sacrificial Negro is the person that is the black male or female that basically survives to die for the white person, and so we've seen that a lot of times where the black person will do something to help protect that white person so that they could keep on living, and they die.
I know, and the joke is like,
Well, what do they address this in the movie? Because this is a question I have. When you see these movies where there's like literally one black person in the whole movie, like how the fuck did they come to be in this community of entirely white people? That's something I really don't understand. Like, as far as I understand, like multi-ethnic communities are, well, they're just that. They're multi-ethnic. Like, how is there just like this one lone black person in this small slice of white suburbia?
Well, that's the magic of movies. That's the magic of movies. And it's interesting you brought that up because that's one thing that they bring up in the movie is that in the 1980s, with Reagan and everything, like there was this idea of the lily white America, the suburban America. So a lot of the movies do take place in the suburbs, from Halloween to Nightmare on Elm Street, Amityville, Poltergeist. So there was no more space for Black people in these areas. So you bring up a good point. I'll say this though, one franchise, because when we did the rewatches, or for me it was the first time watch for the podcast for Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare. One thing I liked about Friday the 13th is it was the most mixed of all the cast that I saw. It was the one that had the most
It was
mixture
very mixed,
of,
yes.
of different folks. So I'll give Friday the 13th some props for that. And it had some good kills, man.
Mm.
It had some really good kills. Um, and then we have the magical Negro, which we talked about, and then we just have the invisible Negro, which is what Peter just brought up, with like how we can have this one black person living in this all white suburbs, but a lot of times they just didn't bother. They just blacks just disappeared for a little bit in the 80s, and then in the 90s is when we start to have a renaissance of black people. We got Eve's Bayou. We have Jada Pinkett in what's that
Yes.
movie she did with I forgot the name of the movie now, but she's considered the first final black girl, because she survives to the end. We got Candyman, and then the 2000s we start getting into some hip hop and horror connections. So we get a lot of rappers showing up in horror movies, until finally we Get Out, which for me,
Yes.
when I watched Get Out, man, that it gave me goosebumps. I was like, okay, it took this long for me to see the movie that I've been trying to see, which
Right.
is a
Right.
black cat with a black hero who doesn't get fucked over in the end, because the original ending he was supposed to get locked up, because when the police the lights come on, you're like, oh shit. It's almost like, how a lot of horror movies always have that fake, that false ending where you think you killed the monster and then he comes back. I was like, no. And
Yeah.
what I dug about that movie is that it spoke to all these things that I had felt, but I didn't know exactly how to verbalize. And I noticed them growing up, but I never knew how to exactly put my finger on it. And Jordan Peele was able to
Yeah.
express all in that movie. It's like these are the things
Yeah.
that frame black people just living in America, but these are also the things
Yes.
that when we watch horror movies, we notice that we don't see. So
Right.
Renee made
Yeah.
that point at the beginning, which is um, it's hard to imagine. Like Pete, remember when we were watching the Uganda movies, the Uganda Land, whatever it's called, Nollywood movies.
Oh
It's
yeah,
all
Wakaliwood. Wakaliwood.
yeah,
Captain
Walt
Alex, who
Hollywood.
killed Captain Alex?
Movies are great. Oh my goodness, those movies are so good. But it's an all black cast, 100%. And and they're
Right.
not doing it out of like let's make a social movement out of it. It's because 99% of the population is black. That's what they're gonna find. And then there was that one movie where they had that one white actor, and then I think that's the closest that I think a non-white person can understand, like what it would feel like to just just have white
Right.
media all the time, and understand that without feeling butthurt about it. It's not like
Right.
we're against white
Yeah.
media. I love Lost or whatever these TV shows that have majority white cast. Like I'm into
Mhm.
it, right?
Mhm.
But I don't think you're capable of really understanding what it would feel like to all of a sudden be in Uganda, right, or be in Zimbabwe, or Nigeria, I should say, because they have Nollywood in Nigeria. And all of a sudden, yeah, people that are getting cast for these movies are going to be black because that's what we
Mhm.
have. That's what stories we're going to tell about our people. And you would be the anomaly if you watch that. You'd be like, oh, look, there's a white guy on the screen.
Right.
It's exactly like that for black folks. And I can speak even for gay actors and stuff. Like, I just,
Hmm.
there weren't gay.
Even
Like,
less.
we're starting to see them now.
Well,
We
it's
had
a
our
lot
first.
easier to hide being
Right.
gay than it is to hide being your ethnicity.
This is
I
true. This
mean,
is
Right.
true.
you can
Yeah.
pretend. I mean, nobody realized Rock Hudson was gay until long
Yeah, but but
after the
stories
fact.
weren't being written about these characters being gay
Right,
and done in
right.
an intelligent way. I mean, and again, with the gay thing, it's the same way. You had to start with the silly, with the stereotypical, with the Will and Graces of the world in order to get to maybe going back to Star Trek. This last show they have out, Star Trek Discovery, has a gay couple in it, and it's an interracial gay couple, and they're not nothing against. I mean, some gays are flamboyant, but we don't. I don't need to see that stereotype again, right? It's
Right.
just dudes.
Right.
One's a doctor, one's an engineer, and they're totally capable and they're totally cool, and they just happen to be gay. And I'm going to open it up to you guys in a second, but Pete said something real interesting. No,
Mhm.
because this really got me going. I'm sorry, guys. This is
And
uh,
I,
uh,
oh, I do
go
want to
ahead.
add something too when you finish with that, but my internet is going in and out, so I can't hear that well. But I do want to add something to the get out that you were saying. So as soon as you finish with this.
No, well, say it now. Say it now.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. So like when I'm hearing you talk about this, right? Like, the gays being underrepresented, not seeing anyone, not seeing that. I go back and I think about Get Out. And so, historically growing up and watching horror films and these different films, it's always the black man going after the white woman, or the white person saving the black person or the black child. And so it was so interesting to see the Get Out that all of the white people in that movie were evil. They were all trying to kill him.
Yeah.
So you never see that. And it's just like,
Yeah.
wow.
I think
So
what
mhm.
Yeah, I think what Jordan Peele was trying to do there is he was actually trying to satirize liberal white racism,
Mhm.
like the white people who virtue signal basically by saying I'm not racist by behaving incredibly racist. Like
Right.
that's exactly what some incredibly leftist liberal white people do. It's like, look at me, I'm such a good person, I'm not a racist. And by doing that, they're actually being incredibly racist. And I
Oh
think
my
Jordan
God,
Peele was
Right.
just like mocking that type of mentality.
Pete, you
Hmm.
are
And he
setting
does
up
that with
what
us as
we're
well.
definitely. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yes, exactly.
Say that again, Renee, because I missed it. Say that again.
Uh-huh. Yeah. No, it's okay. Yeah, my internet is going out too, and I think there's a lag or something. But I was just adding, this wasn't on Black Noir, but Us, the other film that Jordan Peele did after, it also touched on race and class. And so that was another film that was horror that was really good and just really wild and different,
Oh,
you know.
us. Yeah, I didn't
Uh,
like him as much, but he's definitely in that vibe. Which you segued me into what I was gonna say, and then we're gonna move ahead because we don't
okay.
want to spend all night talking about this movie.
Yeah, we've been
But
talking about this movie for like a fucking hour.
I
I could
know.
watch the movie and and we'd be done by now.
Uh, Pete, you said one is Pete kind of lay a little bit of preview of what we may be talking about when we get into Uncle Tom about white liberal racism, and that's one thing. That's what I took out the most out of Get Out, which I thought was great because I have some issues with some white progressives. Oh my goodness, I think I have more issues with them conservative white folks when it comes to racism. Um, but then what I was going to say, just to close it out, and is that one thing that, but I think it was based on something that Pete was talking about, but I can't remember now. But one thing that we read that I is going to make me feel like we really made it. Yeah, it was Pete. because he was talking about
Mm.
how the character, like Sidney Portier, always had to play like a black this or a black that, and he couldn't just be the cop. So I hope that in the next couple years or so, we get more of just they just happen to be black, which doesn't mean it takes away from their blackness. Doesn't mean that they have to act like they're not black or they're not this. No, but that's not like the driving part of the whole mythology or narrative. I love Get Out. I love this new show, Lovecraft Country, and it. But that's still part of the narrative. Antebellum that's coming out is another example of. It looks really good, but that's still part of the narrative where race is part of this person's being and what drives the movie. I love it when I just see like I don't know if Pete got to Alien versus Predator yet, but there's a black lady that's the lead, and they don't bring up the fact that she's black once. She just happens to be a
Mm.
badass. She's so badass that
Right.
she ends up teaming up with the Predator at the end,
Right.
right?
Hey,
So,
you know what movie is really good for that is Unforgiven. Unforgiven.
Unforgiven.
Mm. I
I'll
haven't watched
Morgan Freeman, like the king of like playing black stereotypes, is actually like just treated as like an ordinary person in that movie, and it's
yes,
completely unbelievable because like in the 1870s, I think it's what 1874 or 1876, I don't remember the year, but at that time, like the idea of like a black man and a white man being best friends is totally unbelievable. And the only thing that makes it work is that they live so far on the fringes of society that their only relationship with straight people is killing them. So it works in that context. But like Ned's race is never once mentioned in that movie. And
yeah.
it almost makes you scratch your head. But when you look back on it and think of the context that Eastwood was trying to make the movie in, it actually kind of works.
No, if you do it right, it works, you know. And because the thing is, it's like you damned if you do, you damned if you don't. Because if you do
Right.
get some black characters that just happen to be black, then you'll have black folks. They're like, oh, but she doesn't, she doesn't talk about her black. They're like, it's like I think Pete and I were talking about this when we were talking about Beyonce's documentary, like how some black folks hate on Oprah because Oprah doesn't do black enough, and it's like, but
right.
fuck it, and like Oprah is Oprah. She is the way she
Oprah
comes
is
out.
Oprah though. She can do whatever she wants.
Exactly. Like
Yeah, I
you
got to
need,
admit that movie where she played the first lady, I found her really hot. I found her really hot in that movie.
I don't remember that movie. She played the
The
first
the
lady.
Me
the one
neither.
where Forrest Whitaker was no, she wasn't the first lady. Sorry,
Oh, the
she was
Butler. The
the
Butler.
butler. Yes, yeah, yeah, she was smoking in that.
Yeah, I dug that movie.
But
That was a good movie.
but it's so interesting. Like one of Oprah's first things was the color purple. I mean, how much blacker could you get than that?
I
Like that's
know.
black
She's a,
enough.
Yeah.
I know. And she was a huge champion of Toni Morrison. Beloved. If you've never seen the movie Beloved, it's a great adaptation of the
Oh
book. She's
yeah.
really good in that with Danny Glover. So, people just want to talk shit because they can. But for me, that's important. And I think that's important because I'm such a Star Trek fan. And that's what Uhura was. Uhura could have been replaced by a robot if they wanted to, like her part, because she actually did want to leave the show because she wasn't getting enough lines. And Gene Roddenberry told her, listen, you don't understand what I'm trying to do here. Like, I'm trying to get Martin Luther King's dream on the screen. A person is judged by their character and not the color of their skin. You're on that bridge because you're capable, like the character, like the character is good at what she does. It has nothing to do with the fact you're a woman or black. So for me that's important, and it doesn't take away from her blackness, just like with Cisco. I know Pete's seen Star Trek Deep Space Nine, where he's just a badass fucking
Deep Space.
captain, but they'll have episodes where they go into the fact that yeah, he also happens to be black and he's proud of it, and he teaches that to his son, their history and their heritage. So that's where I hope the horror in goes next, is that we don't have to always have that, which I love, by the way. I'm not hating on it. I think it's really interesting that we have this mix, like with the Watchmen also did a little bit of this racial aspect to it. They brought that in. But at some point, it'd be cool to just see, look, this is just a great black character. This just happened to be black. He's just the lead. It would be like watching fucking Dirty Dancing, but it's with a black guy. It was,
Right.
like it doesn't have to have anything more to it than that. So anyway,
Yeah,
we went
I'm
hard.
watching American Gods right now. Actually, I read the book recently, and it's funny because it never actually. I'm sure they mentioned it in the book, but it never actually like. I didn't have a vision of the character. I didn't think of him as a black character. And in the TV series, he's totally portrayed as a black character, and it's not a thing or anything, but like that's exactly what you're saying. Like at some point, it's got to be that like the characters are just characters, and it has nothing to do with ethnic ethnicity. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry,
it,
bit
it,
drunk.
no, it's fine, but it's a line. It's a delicate line to walk because I think about it just in my life. Like when I walk out on the street, I don't want people to see me as a black person. Just see me as a person, but at the same time, recognize that I am black. I hate when people say I don't see color. No, I'm not fucking invisible either. I'm a black person, and there's shit that comes with that. My
Yeah.
heritage and everything. Just like Pete's a Canadian. Like I want to see Pete as Pete. I love Pete because he's a crazy motherfucker. But the fact that he's Canadian is part of that. I'm not going to erase his Canadianness. Or Renee. I love Renee because
Right.
she's Renee. But obviously, she's also a woman, so I can't take away the fact that she's a woman. So I like it. I want to see movies where it's 60-40 more. This is a person, and then they also have that aspect to them and not the other way around. But we're getting there. Renee, any final thoughts, my dear? We kept you long past your bedtime. Oh,
Yes, way past my bedtime. Um, but the sound quality is so horrible. It's choppy. I don't even know how I sound.
you sound great.
Um,
Hey, you sound good
oh,
on my end, actually.
oh, good,
Yeah.
good, good, good. Okay. I didn't know because you guys are sounding so choppy. I'm hearing, little bits and pieces. But it was cool. Thank you for having me on, and just talking a little bit about this documentary. So um, I think that's it.
All right, Renee. And
All
guys, just
right.
so you know, Renee, she is down here in São Paulo, in Rio, and she's a tantric specialist. Okay, so she does have a YouTube channel which is Prada. I can never say it. Prandara
Pandara.
Prandara Prem. Okay, it's really cool, and you have to be very no, I'm not going to say anything. Just go there and just accept things as they come.
I just I just sent you my IG handle in case you want to add it. So it was nice to come on and talk about something other than tantra.
Yeah,
So it was nice.
she's really good at what she does. It's very open. Oh, there you go in the private chat. There it is. I can put that. Renee, how do I put that in? I don't know how to do it. How do I?
Oh,
I guess I.
copy and paste and then put it in the comments, and then
Oh,
you
I
hit
got it.
show or
So,
yeah,
guys, if you
or
wanna,
just a
if you
comment.
want, I got it. I got it. If you want to, there you go. Prandara Prem underline.
Okay, yeah, there we go.
So she's on all the
Tantra.
time.
Oh shit. Damn.
Yes,
What?
she's on all the
All
time.
right.
She plays that stereotype well of women multitask much better than men because I don't know how the fuck she does it. She's on like
uh,
24/7
it's a
on
pity we can't keep
YouTube.
her around for this because at the end of we're gonna be talking about gender stereotypes. So
I
go from
let me
talking
tell you.
about
So the
Yeah,
night before last, the last 2 nights, I literally have not slept. I think 2 nights ago, I
uh,
sent Phil a message. I was like at 4 o'clock in the morning. I can't sleep. So So I'm exhausted
Uh,
right now, and I don't even think I'm even thinking clearly like I normally am. And I wanted to try to take a nap before this, and it didn't happen. So, but I would
yeah,
love to schedule it
no,
when I'm more clear, and we could talk more.
I feel
Definitely.
that. I woke up at 2 p.m. today, so I'm actually pretty fresh, but I do have bouts of insomnia.
Yeah.
All right then. Well,
All right.
Renee,
Well, this was great. It was nice to hear both of you, both of your thoughts on this documentary and horror films, and it's always good to just hear different point of views from different, from different backgrounds. So I thought this was really interesting. So thank you for including me.
no problemo.
Wow, it
I
was
will.
great to have you, man.
I know you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Whenever you available. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Renee. Until next time. So Pete and I, we're gonna move ahead,
Anytime.
and
We've been talking about this movie for an hour, man.
I know tonight's gonna be one of those long podcasts. But it was great to have Renee on. I thought she brought some good points, which was cool. So check that out if you
Definitely.
can, the horror noir documentary, if you can find it, and you may dig it. But let's move now to more horror. Oh my God, we're getting to tonight's a horror podcast because we're talking about
Yeah,
this
totally over it.
host. What is
Host, yes. Yes. This whole movie was filmed on Zoom, apparently. Really ambitious. It's a very hello. Do I still have you?
I'm here.
Yeah, I do. Okay. All right. So yes, it's all filmed on Zoom, and it's about a haunted Zoom call. Basically, we have, I believe it's 5 or 6 friends who decide to get together to hold a seance on Zoom. Why? I don't know. I mean, that seems like the last thing on earth I would want to do, but that's what they decide to do. And this Chinese girl who you will see in the top right corner,
The one.
she makes up a person she wants to talk to, and they somehow wind up in. Yeah, she winds up invoking the wrong spirit. She invokes an angry spirit who terrorizes everybody, and we only see it on Zoom. Um, what I liked about this was like it makes Blair Witch Project look like Star Wars by comparison. Like it is so low budget. It's like literally filmed on a laptop screen, and the actresses are really good. Like they sell their parts. They have their individual characters. They all come through really well, and it is scary. Like it that's what you want from a horror movie. You want it to be scary, and it is. So yeah, mad props. This is a very 2020 movie. It's set during quarantine. It's set during coronavirus. It's also very realistic in terms of the fact that nobody is actually concerned with coronavirus, which probably has something to do with the fact that they're being stalked by an invisible demon. Um, that might distract you from coronavirus a bit. But no, it's good that this guy just like hammered out this like absolutely cheap, low budget horror movie that still looks good.
This is one that I've been meaning to check out. I heard about it. I heard about this one and that one that the dudes made for like they made some low budget movie and they bought out a movie theater and it became the number one movie in America. So it's cool that you get these folks that are still trying to make something new and inventive given the period. And I'm curious as to what will be the first major movie that's going to actually broach the subject of 2020. Because how can you skip that? You know, right?
Right.
In his, and how do you touch on it? Like, how do you talk about it? You know? So I'm curious to see this. I'm glad that you watched it. This how long is it?
It's 55 minutes, man. It's like a Black Mirror episode.
Okay, so I'll probably watch it after the podcast real quick, um, and see what's up. Although I don't know because I'm kind
Yeah,
of
I mean, it goes one of those movies where like you know what's going to happen, right? Like, if you're watching it, it's like okay, you have a basic understanding of what it's about, and you don't want it to fuck around too much. And it does have this like I said, the whole thing's shot on Zoom, so what you see on the screen here, that's actually what you're seeing on the screen as you watch the movie. It's all these like multiple screens of these women interacting with each other, but it
that's
doesn't fuck around. It takes like about 15 minutes before it like really kicks into overdrive, and then it's over. And it's like, you know what? Like, I appreciate that. I appreciate you not wasting my time because I had another movie to watch tonight. So I'm glad that you actually just delivered the story in short, concise fashion. It was entertaining. And now I can move on with the rest of my day.
thank the Lord because man, oh man, like uh, seems like the trend nowadays is to make these movies longer and longer and longer, and I'm like, I just wanna. If it's an action movie, let me see shit blowing up. If it's a scary movie, let me see people getting chopped up. Like I don't need a 30-minute backstory to
Right.
get me interested in a movie. And man, oh man, these movies are so long nowadays. And my bladder, I mean, I'm getting to that age where I need a lot of pee breaks. So my bladder is not very, even like the superhero movies, and I love them, but my God, like I don't need a 2-hour superhero movie, you know? Um, so
Yeah, it depends
I,
on how good it is, but
it
yeah,
depends, but it's rare that you get that one that keeps your attention like the whole time, like, oh my God, you know, like it's nice to have
right.
like with Endgame, and the one that came after, or was it the one that came before? But that last
Uh,
those last
Infinity War. Infinity War.
Infinity War,
Yeah,
yeah,
Infinity
Infinity
War
War.
is a classic. I mean, that
I
that
like
that movie is like you
I
you
like that one
need all
better.
the movies that came before it. That's the thing. You need to watch 20 movies in order for Infinity War to have any context. But
I
if you
know,
do have that context, it's fucking amazing.
but I dug that one better than the second part, part two. But
Yeah,
you know,
the ending was a bit weak.
but I kind of like I can deal with the 2.5 hours of that because there's a culmination, like you said, of 20 movies. But I don't need all those 20 movies to be 2 hours long. Like it can be an hour and 40 minutes,
Right.
an hour.
Oh,
The
for sure.
get me out. Let me enjoy something fun, and um, that's enough. So cool. I'm gonna check that one out. Definitely. I'll probably do it tonight.
Yeah, yeah. One thing about this too is it reminded me how much I fucking hate Zoom, man. Um, I, I use Zoom occasionally for work, but it is like my least favorite platform. Like the first time I tried to use it, my computer crashed, and then I had to fucking restart it and do everything again. Um, I mean, we mostly work online these days because we live in a giant germ factory where contact with other people is deadly. Um, but Zoom is definitely the worst. Google Hangouts is better, and the Microsoft platform is really good. I used to really like Skype, but unfortunately, Skype is acting really weird these days, so I have to
Yeah, they've
use the
been doing
web
some
version.
weird. They've been doing some weird updates. Yeah, but I understand because I'm working with Zoom now. I'm not having as many issues with Zoom. I think it's frustrating some of the way that it's set up platform wise. But when I downloaded WebEx, I had to start working with that for this high school. It killed my computer. I can't even say I brought it back to life. I'm actually this computer I have
Yeah.
now is using a hard drive from my old computer that's been up on top of my shelf for like 2 years. An LG computer hard drive inside of a Samsung computer because the Samsung hard drive just died. So yeah, but that's the new
Oh
reality.
man.
But I wonder if this will be like this new genre, like we had the found footage movies after Blair Witch.
Right,
I wonder
right.
if it'll be Zoom footage movies, the social hangout movie footage
Well,
movies.
shit, man. It does not look like it costs that much to film. Like, first of all, I want to say like all the actresses in this movie are really great. They all do a really good job. But I would not be surprised if some of them didn't get paid. Um, so if you take that into consideration, like this looks like it probably cost about 15 US dollars to make. Like, just
That's
shot on
cool.
Zoom with a cell phone.
That's
Um,
cool.
but
Cool.
yeah, but it works. It works. The only thing I don't understand is why anyone would use Zoom socially. Because I've been hearing this a lot lately. Like, oh, I don't get to see my friends, but we hang out on Zoom sometimes. It's like, fuck, dude, I'm not hanging out with you on Zoom. Like, Zoom is a professional chore for me. If I get told I have to use Zoom, that is like a fucking headache for my entire
Yes,
day. I'm
yes.
not gonna fucking socialize with you on Zoom.
No, I don't get it. Like I talk to people via WhatsApp. Like today with Renee, we actually, but we weren't like on Zoom chatting it up. Like, how you doing? Like we do that on WhatsApp. We did it just because I was able to show her the movie off of my screen on Zoom, so that worked out. So a win for Zoom. But to actually be like, hey Pete, let's hang out from at 8 p.m. tomorrow on Zoom. I hope you tell me to go fuck myself if I have to do this.
I would. I would.
Yeah, I don't get that. You know, people are doing all these like Zoom. I like some of the meetups though. I think, but I did it on Google Hangouts. Like here in Brazil, they have the polyglot group, and I think I did one or two of those where they were just hanging out and talking English. It was okay, but even then, it's like it's a purpose, and I don't actually know those people. It's just like, okay, we're gonna talk about a topic, and then have
Right.
and so it's not professional, but it's not totally social either. Like any of my friends, I would never do that. It just feels weird. It feels
Right.
I'm not for that level of corona pandemic. Um, let's move ahead and talk about this other documentary that came out this year. And it's weird. I'm watching a whole lot of documentaries. I don't know why, but I'll get in because I guess there's
Proud
no.
Black and Republican.
And we've been around for a while. We've been around for a while, and it's
Yep.
true. It's very true. So, um, the movie, in case you guys forgot, is Uncle Tom. Okay, and it was brainchild of Larry Elders, who is a very famous. Just give me a second here. A very famous black conservative. He has a radio show and blah blah blah. Be honest with you, I don't think I've ever watched much of him. I'm not a huge fan of his. But yeah, it's a screenplay by Larry Elders, directed by Justin Malone. So it's a political documentary that tries to shine a little bit of light on what a black conservative is. Why did I want to watch this movie? Well, first, a buddy of mine sent it to me, and he's like, "Oh, you might like this." But two, because I don't identify very much with Democrats or the left wing. Automatically, that puts me like on the as a conservative Republican. I don't know. People can't seem to think outside of these two lines. Um,
Yeah.
and I have to tell people all the time, I'm not a conservative. Like, I'm just not. I mean, I'm right now here in Brazil, I'm shitting on a bunch of conservatives because they're protesting. Oh my God. Okay, you want a reason why I'm not a conservative? Look at what these people are doing down here, the Brazilian conservatives. There was this 10-year-old girl who was raped since she was 6 by her uncle. Ends up she's pregnant at 10 or was pregnant, and she only found out she was pregnant very late. I think I forgot how many I think months into it. But in either case, they chose to abort the child. And these black conservatives are protesting outside the hospital. This bitch found out this little girl's name in the hospital she was staying at. Um, because they kept moving her from hospital to hospital, because one hospital wouldn't do the procedure, the other hospital said they would, and they're calling her an assassin and a baby murderer. And I'm like, that, if that doesn't
Yeah,
tell you why.
it's worth inserting at this point that abortion is illegal. So.
Yeah, abortion is illegal in Brazil, unless it's after rape, after if the baby has, there's a disease where the head is kind of shrunk, and if there's a risk to the mother's life. The issue, though, I think, is because I think it's 6 months. I think it's 6 months that she was pregnant, but she didn't know, or maybe she wasn't allowed to do anything about it until she got really, she started feeling a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, and then they said, no, we're gonna abort this child. In any case, if that doesn't tell you why I'm not a conservative, that these motherfuckers can actually demonize for political brownie points a 10-year-old who was abused since she was 6. I'm like, fuck these motherfuckers. So I'm not a conservative. And it's mainly for that reason, because conservatism and religiosity have gotten married, you know, and I'm much more live and let live. Like, you do you, I do me. I identify a little bit more as a libertarian than anything. And you do you, I do me. Stay out of my way, I'll stay out of yours. And if we're friends, great. If we're not,
Yeah,
then
live
fuck
and let
you.
live.
You know. But I'm not gonna lie. When I kind of left the Democrats, I don't think I was ever with the Democrats, but when I did, it was actually after a Spike Lee movie, Get on the Bus. They had a black Republican on there that I identified with much more than all the Democrats on the bus, and so I think I was a Republican in name only. I don't for maybe about a year. Like, I kind of was like, okay, I can deal with this. Less government, lower taxes. Um, just kind of like, work hard and you'll get where you got to go in life. So you realize it's all about the bullshit, and the Democrats and Republicans are about the same. So I left that to the wind. But that said, there's a lot in the conservative platform that on paper looks good, as far as it's supposed to be smaller government, supposed to be lower taxes, treating individuals as individuals and not, all this, what's this thing, race politics that they have now, identity politics and all this stuff.
Identity politics. Yes.
So,
Yes. Congrats to Kamala Harris.
oh, God, yeah. So I'm not going to lie that if you sit me down with somebody that's a bit more conservative and someone that's a bit more liberal, I'm probably going to agree more with some things that the conservatives are going to say than what that liberal is going to say, until we start getting into personal freedoms,
Yeah.
what you ingest, who you fuck, how
Yeah.
you ID yourself as a human being. If Pete wakes up tomorrow and tells me he feels like he's Petra, I'm gonna be like, okay, like, whoa, that's not gonna affect my life. Okay, go get yourself a pair of tits, Pete. And
Not gonna
that's where
happen, but
you know. So I thought it was so it attracted me to this movie. I wanted to see how they were going to portray black Republicans, and I did learn a few things that I didn't know, and I had taken down some notes, but I have no clue where they are. But just off the top of my head, what I think would be interesting for people to watch this movie is, one, that black Republicans go way back. Because if you know a little bit about U.S. history, Abraham Lincoln was a Republican.
he was a
The
Republican.
Republican
Yes.
Party, is the one that freed slaves, is the one that gave voting rights to blacks, is the one that made blacks full citizens of the United States, even though they didn't have full rights. That's where we have the Jim Crow era, separate but equal. So for a very long time, blacks were Republicans. That was their party. The Democrats were actually the ones that started the Ku Klux Klan, that that fought for segregation laws in the South, that really pushed against um, blacks having a lot of rights in America. And then the movie gets into this thing, because a lot of folks, when you say that, they say, well, the party switched. Somewhere the party switched. And then the Democrats became the party of for blacks, and the Republicans became this party of white supremacists. And the movie does a good
Yeah.
job at dispelling that myth because it didn't exactly happen like that. And one thing that I learned, which I thought was interesting, was that especially in the 1960s, we got John F. Kennedy, we got LBJ, two Democratic presidents. They were the ones that are given credit for the Civil Rights Act, Martin Luther King and all that jazz, which ended segregation. But if you don't count all the Democratic presidents before them that were totally against this, which is interesting, like Woodrow Wilson, for example, um, the president, in a little bit of government lesson here, the president is not a dictator. The president can't just say, okay, this is going to be the law of the land. There's
Right.
a balance of power, there's the three branches of power. So for a bill like that to pass, it's got to be voted by Congress. And I didn't know this, but there were a higher percentage of Republicans that voted for these bills. I'm sorry, there was a higher percentage of Democrats that voted against these bills than of Republicans that voted for it, or something like that. I'm probably mixing up the math. But in either case, these bills passed because Republicans in Congress are the ones that passed it. There were plenty of Democrats that did not want this to pass because the Southern Democrats were very powerful and they continued to in power. So there was never a shift. These same racist policies of that the Democrats have had for a very long time continue. They just branded it better. And then, I mean, in the movie goes into a lot of this about how Democratic policies have actually hurt blacks more than anything. It shows
Well, like
how.
that when you were talking about how the Democrats, I think it was under Clinton, they passed a bill that said you couldn't ask Black or Latino people if they'd had a criminal history, and basically what it meant was they just didn't hire Black or Latino people.
Yes, exactly. Or even a lot of the welfare state, man. The welfare state. I mean, it if you go, it's so sad because you look at like literacy level, unemployment levels of blacks leading up to the time where these bills to like help were passed. They were like decreasing like by large margins. Like people were working, people were going to school. I'm talking about black folks, and then it's like a total reversal. You go from like the 1965, 1970s on, all of a sudden, you have blacks that are out of work. Crime rate is higher in black communities. You have this explosion of black men in jail. You have this whole, you like it's a reversal of what was happening. So you have to ask yourself, what programs were put into place to allow for this shift. Talking about a shift, that's the shift that I think about more. Is like, how did blacks go from they were on the upward swing, regard, regardless of or in spite of all the blockades in their way, like open racism and Jim Crow and in Jim Crow laws, and lynching laws and all of that. But they were on this upward movement, and then it's just like, you know. So the movie does a good job at broaching all of these topics. I think you got to watch it with an open mind if you're independent. If you're an independent thinker, where it goes awry, kind of goes off the tracks a little bit for me, is that it starts to get towards the middle. It starts to become a join the Republican Party type of a movie, which
Okay, yeah.
yeah, it's not no, I'm not doing it, because there's a lot in the Republican Party that I disagree with, and especially
Yeah,
their message
I,
is not a
I, I
very.
think actually where it really changed was with Reagan, and I'm actually old enough to remember Reagan,
Mhm.
but he was like the first evangelical president. Like he was a
Exactly.
total like fucking on your knees praying to the Bible. God is king type of president. And since then, that's the direction the party has gone. Like it's gone so far that you actually have like subdivisions of the Republican Party that are even more evangelical than regular Republicans, where other
Yes.
Republicans are like, "Whoa, that's a bit too much for me."
So, those are the guys that when they have the Republican debates, they're on like the second night. I've watched one of those debates before, and I'm like, what the fuck? Those are the Republicans that have like 10 or 5% of the vote. So they debate on a second night. And it's scary. But you hit the nail on the head. I didn't bring it up, but I'm glad you did, because that's really when that shift happened with the Republicans. But I'll give the movie some points because the black folks in the movie, because it's all, all black Republicans that are being interviewed, even Candace Owens, which I can't stand. But they do have Patty on there, so shout out to Patty, who has a Facebook page, Young Black and Conservative. She's very
Did they have
cool.
Condoleezza Rice in there? Because
They
she's
don't. They don't have
amazing, actually.
Condoleezza. They don't have Condoleezza. She's
Oh
kind of
yeah, because she's too sane. She's too sane.
yeah.
That's her problem. She is like, I could be president, but I'm getting the fuck out of this shit.
I know she's just off in the sunset. So good for her. And Colin Powell too. Colin Powell was just like fuck.
Yeah,
But
yeah. He was,
Um, but what was cool is that they at least were able to admit in towards the end of the doc, they talked about how Republicans have shot themselves in the foot too, because they don't know how to brand their message, and they've fed into this narrative that blacks are a monolith, like Joe Biden believes we are, and that we
yeah,
all
bitten, I
and that we
believe.
all yeah, and that we all think the same. So they don't actually actively pursue black votes. And it's interesting because there's a lady that's part of the doc. She's an interviewee, and she was running for mayor of Louisiana or Tennessee. I can't remember now, but she put her electoral headquarters, or campaign headquarters, I meant to say, right in a black neighborhood. And the people behind the scenes, the Republican strategists were like, why are you doing that? Because these are people that are never going to vote for you. So I like that they noticed that's the problem with the Republicans, is that they do come off as the party of all white people because they're not actively trying to get uh, black people to look at their side, and they just believe that all blacks are going to vote Democrat, and all blacks aren't. A lot of blacks are leaving the Democratic Party. They're looking for a third party. They're looking for
Yeah.
independent, green, libertarian. And Patty, which I mentioned, is a great example. I've been following her page, and while I'm on there, like for about a year, I noticed like she's not in line with she's not the Candace Owen types, you know? And I could
Right.
tell she's slowly shifting, and now she's calling herself like a constitutionalist or something other than conservative. And she says, I'm not voting for Donald Trump in 2020. It's like what he does not align with what I feel. So it's cool. People are waking up, but they're not going Democrat, which is interesting. It would be cool if some new party came out of this. But just to sum up here, really good documentary. Yes, there's a little section of about 10 to 15 minutes where you're like, oh my God, this is total just conservative propaganda. But they go into a lot of history of black folks, how black folks are demonized for not being democratic, and they're called Uncle Toms, coon. And,
Yeah.
and it's interesting. I did want to bring this up about Uncle Tom, because I got called an Uncle Tom about 2 years ago or so in this Facebook group by a black person, and it was the first time I've been called an Uncle Tom. I think. I think ever. I've been called other things. I was called an Oreo before. Oreo is when you're black on the inside and white on the
Yeah,
inside.
yeah, yeah.
White on the inside. Um, but I don't think I ever called it Uncle Tom. And then when the girl called me an Uncle Tom, I was like, thank you, right? But I didn't do it like out of irony. I did it out of, I actually read the book. And it's interesting because the very first scene in the movie, the guy says the same thing. He's like, oh, when they call me an Uncle Tom, I just laugh at their ignorance. But I wish you would have broken down why. and
Right.
this is why.
Well, well, like the Delroy Lindo character in The Five Bloods, I thought that was a really interesting take on that. He was like a proud Trump-loving black man.
He was, he was. But check this out with Uncle Tom, in case people don't know. You got to read the book, and I had to actually research this because I was like, why is she calling me an Uncle Tom? Because I've read the book, and Uncle Tom is actually the hero of that book. He saves these other black slaves. Um, but what happens is that later, it's like the same thing you see in Hollywood all the time. They change the ending. That's what they
Right.
did. There were these stage plays of Uncle Tom's Cabin that were rewritten and reworked to make Uncle Tom be this very subservient, kind of like Renee and I were talking about before, like the sacrificial black, the one that's the good servant. And at the end,
The
when
houseboy.
yes, and when these very bad things happen to these other slaves, at the end of the movie, he forgives his slave owner and says, "Oh, I know it was, like it was a bad thing that happened, but I know God is going to forgive you," and blah blah blah. Whatever. I've never seen the stage play, but something to that effect. And I was like, now I get it. Now I get why they use Uncle
Ah, I
Tom.
didn't know. I actually didn't know the context of that either. Actually, I've been
Yeah,
very aware of the expression for a long time, but I
exactly.
didn't know where it
I
came
I
from.
knew it was supposed to, I mean, I knew it was somebody that loved whites more than black, like a race trader. I knew that much, but I didn't know in what context. I'd always be confused because I'm like, I read the fucking book when I was like 18 or 19, and that, like, he's a hero. He's like, Uncle Tom is a fucking black folk hero. He's wonderful in the book. But then I found out, okay, in the stage play, they changed him, but the stage play came out like decades later, and it was definitely done as propaganda. So I get it. So it was funny because the guy started the movie that way, but he didn't explain the context. I think that would have been a cool thing to explain to folks. But I recommend it. Look, black people are not a fucking monolith. We've been very
Yeah,
blacklisted
no,
here.
I totally want to send this to my hardcore leftist cousin who is like literally like the stereotype of the liberal white racist. I'm so
Oh,
not racist because I have these views about people of color. So yeah, I
yeah,
would love
but
to send that to her.
they want to think for us, and it's like, no, you can't think for us. We're buried, and some of us are, and there's nothing wrong with identifying as a liberal, but there's nothing wrong as identifying as a conservative. Now the problem is that the Republican has had a history of being really shitty, especially since Reagan. And it's funny they talk about Kennedy, and they're like Kennedy's policies. He wanted to cut taxes. He was an avid gun owner and fan of guns until he got shot, I guess. Um,
Yeah,
so if you look at Kennedy today, he would be like a Republican. I mean, he could fit as a Republican. Like his famous quote: "It's not what your country can do for you. Oh no, it's not what your
you
country
can
can do
do
for
for
you. It's
your
what you
country what
can do
you
for
can
your
do
country."
for your country.
Exactly, and it's like that's about as Republican as you can get, right? Like there are no handouts
Yeah,
over here.
yeah, and he was also openly fucking a movie star too. Like everybody knew it.
Yeah, which is wonderful. But so the problem I think is that liberals have gotten way to the left and the Republicans have gone way to the right, and they're both shitty parties, and then black people are just kind of like, where do I go in
I
this?
don't I don't think the contemporary Democratic Party is anywhere close to left, honestly. I mean, Ben, he's slightly right of center. And the
Yeah,
Republicans are like supremely right of center. I don't think
you
there
know
is
what?
a left in American politics now.
No, there is definitely a left, but I agree with you. Like when I watched the debates between Trump and Hillary, or even Hillary before in the primaries, I'm like, compared to Bernie Sanders, she's coming off as a Republican. Like if this was
Yeah,
like
totally.
years, her policies were just your average Republican policies. But I think for me to notice that is because the party has shifted. It's gotten, and then she tried to do that herself. She tried to get into more of the progressive message towards the end of her campaign, but it was too little too late, because she wanted to get those Bernie folks and those AOC folks on her side. So I think the head of the party I don't think is, but they sprinkle enough of it around so that in the lower houses like the Congress and maybe in some local government, I think the party is definitely shifting more in one direction. But I agree with you. Overall, I don't think it is. But it's a shame because not just black people, but I think Americans in general don't trust either party. But I just think it sucks that white people have that liberty of, choosing one or the other or thinking one way or the other. But then when a black person says, yes, fuck Hillary Clinton or fuck Joe Biden, then it's like, oh, you're an Uncle Tom, you're this, you're that. It's like, yeah, but these are motherfuckers. It doesn't mean I'm pro Trump. And they do talk about Trump in this movie and why so many black folks were attracted to Trump. It's because he's not a Republican either. He's just a crazy motherfucker, you
No,
know?
he's an outsider. He's an
Yeah,
outsider.
he's a total outsider. And his whole thing,
That I got in a huge fight in a punk group of all things because someone posted this thing about Trump being a political sex pistol. And of course, punks in general tend to be leftists and like, that's an abomination. But it's true. Like the Sex Pistols were outsiders.
mhm.
They were completely anti-establishment. They didn't belong to anything. And Trump is the same way. Like not in a good way necessarily, but it's not a falsehood. Like he is actually, kind of punk in that way.
He's a crazy man. But I think I'd rather have him in office than if it were like his vice president, for example. Like that's a true Republican. That's a true gays need to have psychological treatment Republican. Trump is like
Yeah,
whatever.
he dismantled the pandemic task force too.
Yeah, no, the thing with Trump is like he's interested in one thing only, money. And if you can make him money, he doesn't give a shit if you're a man, woman, black, Mexican, Chinese. If you can make him money, if you're willing to work for the man, he's your friend. If you're not, he's gonna shit on you. And he's an equal opportunity shitter, on
Yeah.
everybody. So I don't ride too much with like, oh, the Trump is racist, Trump is racist. If he's racist, man, I mean, he's been
He's
uh,
he's 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 as racist as Biden. They're on about the same page.
I,
It's a different style of racism, but it's
I
about the
think
same.
Biden is more. I think Biden is more. Biden because Biden is that sneaky racist, like in Get Out, that's gonna pass policies and pass certain laws that's gonna keep black people kind of stuck in place. Trump is just like an I don't give a fuck, which can be just as bad, and I think that's where conservatives don't attract as many black votes because black people, yeah, they got some issues that you got to deal with, which is a little bit different than the average American. They got worse schools, they got worse hospitals, like their neighborhoods are shitty. So yeah, there's some things you gotta deal with when it comes to the black population that's different than the white population. And when you don't address that or don't seem like you care and you just say, oh, if you just work hard, you'll make it. Come on. It's not like
Yeah,
that. Life is not like that.
yeah,
That doesn't attract black votes, okay? Because blacks realize I'm willing to work hard, but I need a little bit of help before I can get to the work hard part. So that's seen as racist because that's seen as somebody that's ignoring something that's right in their face, police brutality, or whatever the issue is. They're ignoring it, so that's racist, which is not exactly on the same level for me as someone that's actively racist, actively doing things against blacks. Um, But it's a touchy subject. I know people get all worked up. I wouldn't have voted for Trump if I were in the U.S. in 2020. But hey, I voted for somebody that shall not be named here in Brazil that some people may think is worse than Trump. But I had to
Hey,
live.
he was doing great until the pandemic. Actually, he
Oh
was doing really good,
yeah, yeah. But
and
I'm
then
done.
he just kind of fucking shit the bed. But
Oh yeah,
you know,
he definitely does not have my vote next election. But shit, it was like Trump said in his campaign to black folks, like, "What do you got to lose?" And I was like, "Yeah." After 8 years of or 10 years of what I had before here in Brazil, I know exactly what I got to lose. So I'm taking on this. Uh, but it is what the fuck it is. So yeah, people that watch this documentary if you want, if with an open mind, if you got one, and try to look at other people's point of views. I think tonight, and Pete is going to talk about a movie now that's going to deal with lesbians. I think tonight, even though we bust jokes and we laugh a lot at social justice warriors, we're kind of doing our own sort of inverse social justice warrior night tonight,
exactly.
but in a sense of like just let people be themselves, like don't force people to, don't be victims of bullshit, like just let people be themselves, listen to other points of view, like these two documentaries, like the horror noir is clearly came from a very left-wing view because they actually talk about Trump in a very negative way towards the end of the movie. This one comes obviously from a very right wing point of view, and I enjoyed both, and I was able to learn from both, even if I'm not 100% gung ho with either side. But you can learn from listening to people. That's why our teachers, when we were little, used to say, "We got 2 ears and one mouth," so we listen more than we talk. But speaking of
Yeah,
which, I'm talking a lot, so we're gonna move ahead, and we're gonna finish out with some lesbians. Oh, I love me lesbians. I
yeah.
love me some
Oh my
lesbians.
God, she's so butch. She's so butch. Um, but yeah, this is what was this movie called? This movie was called
What keeps
"What
you
Keeps You
alive?
Alive." Yes, what keeps you alive. Um, this is
Fear.
this is a really yeah.
Are you there? Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm here.
Pete?
I'm here.
Go ahead,
Um,
go ahead.
yeah. So this is a story about a married couple, and about 15 minutes into the movie, one of the partners attempts to murder the other one. Pushes her right off a cliff. Actually, fucks her up pretty bad. Throughout the rest of the movie, her eye is bugging out of her skull. She's got a fractured eye socket. Her legs all fucked up. Um, and nothing would make this really all that special, except for the fact that it's a same sex relationship between two women. You think of the trope of like a man terrorizing a woman. It's been done in film a ton of times. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. At a certain point, it gets tired. A man terrorizing a man, that is actually even more common because, you know, men are pigs. Like, what can we say? No apologies. Like, we're bastards. We're mostly psychopaths. Um, but the idea of a woman terrorizing a woman, like that's a very fresh take on the movie. And it's the same story, but there's something more compelling about it. And I found as I watched it, um, I've been in committed relationships before with women, and I can tell you that as close as we got, I've never understood women at all. And I've never met a woman who understands men. Um, so there's this idea of the movie being about women doing terrible things to other women was really fascinating to me. Actually, it made,
You're cutting out a little bit, Pete.
okay, sorry. Yes. So basically, I've never understood women, and I've never met a woman who understood men. But the story of a woman terrorizing a woman seemed really fresh and original to me.
And why is she after this lady? Or is that a spoiler?
That's the question. I'll tell you what happens. It's not a spoiler because it happens like 15 minutes into the movie. So the movie starts. It's this married couple, same sex couple. Um,
Oh, you keep cutting out, right?
and yeah, the blonde. Yeah. It looks lovely, romantic, and already, of course, if you know the story of this movie, you know what's going to happen, but you don't know when it's going to happen. But 15 minutes into the movie, they walk to the edge of this cliff, and the bitch just pushes her off, like just pushes her off the cliff. And she lands hard too. She lands on her fucking face, breaks her leg, breaks her face. It's like, oh my god, this is like 15 minutes into the movie. It's not a long one. It's like 75 minutes or something like that. But I mean, your first question is why? I thought these people were in love. And no, it turns out that wifey just like takes out life insurance on her girlfriends and marries them and kills them.
This is a little bit like, is it going to be a little bit like Fatal Attraction or no?
No, because there's no real feeling. Like the villain in this movie, she's a pure sociopath. She doesn't actually have feelings for the woman she's trying to kill. Like she just took out life insurance on her and wants her dead.
Yeah, I gotta watch this. Is this good though? Did you like it? Was it a good movie?
Yeah, it was fun, man. And it actually has a shocking ending. I'm not going to give a spoiler
Is
away,
there
but yeah,
any lesbian action that goes down like in Good
no, no, disappointingly not. Yeah,
Man?
there's a teaser. There's a scene where they're in like the first 10 minutes where they're about to make out, and then the neighbors show up and they have to, yeah, the neighbors because you need more people to kill, right? You can't just have it be these two women versus each other. You got to have a body count. So
I got you.
yeah, there's neighbors. They don't live.
Lesbian assassin. I could ride with that. I could ride with that. And we were talking a little bit about just more representation of different characters, and this seems interesting. I could deal with it. I could deal with it. This movie's from. It's not an American movie, is it? It's a Canadian movie.
I believe it is actually.
That's a Canadian thriller from
Oh,
2018.
okay. It
Uh,
looks Canadian. It looks Canadian, but only because it looks like it was set on one of the Great Lakes. So I mean, could
yeah,
be six on one side, half dozen on the other.
but it's got a lot. It's got an 82 fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Didn't get as much love on IMDb, but I'll check this out. It's directed
Yeah,
by.
yeah. This poor girl, man. Like she looks actually pretty fresh in this picture, but man, like you get tossed off a cliff, like a lot of stuff breaks, and she's messed up for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, when
And
I was
it's kind of cool, like watching her struggle through this, because she's not only dealing with like her physical injuries, but she's also kind of dealing with the heartbreak. Because she's like, it's not just her girlfriend; she was married to this girl.
yeah,
Like she thought it was
first year
true
anniversary.
love, and there's this one wonderful scene. She's like, "Did you ever love me?" And the bitch is like, "No." Not at all, you fucking bitch. I intended to kill you from the beginning.
It's what do you call it? It seems like a movie that I would enjoy, so I'll see if I have time to watch it this weekend. Um, if anybody wants some good lesbian action, watch Good Manners. That was a
Oh
really
yes, yes, that was an excellent film. Uh,
yeah,
be prepared for surprises.
yes, definitely. That's cool. I don't think I've ever seen a movie with like strong lesbian presence other than like on Pornhub. So I'll have to check this one out and see
Yeah, I
what.
mean, Bound is really good too, but the thing is, in Bound, like the lesbians are the protagonists, and the evil straight white male is the villain. Um, so it's a different dynamic. You know, this is like lesbian versus lesbian to the death.
Ooh, I could deal with that. All right, I'll see if I have time to check out because I already finished by the Alien uh, watch, and so that's coming soon, guys. That's coming very soon. The Alien ranking, and I just have to watch Covenant, which I may do tonight. I have a few things because I don't have to wake up too early tomorrow. I have to wake up like at 11, so I'll probably sneak in Alien Covenant, and then I'll be done. I shall be done. Well, guys, tonight was a long one.
Long,
Yeah,
long time. But we had a third party, so you have
yeah.
to admit that that's going to be 30% more time.
But I hope you enjoyed the show. I want to thank everybody that listens to our podcast every week, and keep inviting your friends. And if you have any suggestions for movies for us to watch, I mean, drop them in the comments, especially older stuff, because there's stuff that sometimes we just miss, and we didn't know came out in like
Mm. I
1997 or
watched
something.
Yojimbo yesterday for the first time. That was actually really entertaining.
I saw that you posted that. Yeah, I gotta watch that. I have never seen it.
Yeah, think like the early Clint Eastwood, Sergio Leone movies. It's like that, but Japanese.
Well, they took a lot. Is this a Kurosawa movie or no?
Yeah, it is Kurosawa.
Yeah, but the spaghetti westerns took so much from Kurosawa. That he
For
was super.
sure, for sure.
So, and I like a few of his movies, so I'll check that out. Yojimbo. I know you said you hated the Seven Samurai, but I really like that movie.
I didn't hate it. I just found it kind of boring. It was like 3.5 hours long, and it's just like
Yes.
it's like half the movie is assembling the Seven Samurai, and then they pack all the action into the end. So yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of felt like it was a lot of investment in time that wasn't worthwhile. But I
Well,
like most of Kurosawa's other films, like Straw Dog and Rashomon. Those are good
Rushmore's great.
films.
Yeah. Um, yeah, but they copied a lot of that. But I love me some spaghetti westerns and I love me some Kurosawa, so maybe I'll check that out. So, all right, guys. So, what's on the docket this week? Thursday night, Lower Decks stream if you're a Star Trek fan. And then on Sunday, more Lovecraft Country, and I'll see if I can get Pete to join me for those. And Mondays, as usual, it's what we're watching, and we'll try to stuff in something during the week and talk about it. I'll see if I actually watch a movie to talk about because I've been watching just documentaries the last couple of weeks. But there's so many good ones, so many good documentaries. So if I can give documentaries love, I'm always up for that. Thank you. Like and subscribe to the page, and we will see you next time. And thanks again, Renee, for stopping by.
Yeah, cheers, Renee.
Let me end this.